Shalom, brothers and sisters. Shalom. Giving honor and praise unto the Most High, the Creator and the Maker of heaven and earth. My name is Yeshiah Yisrael of the tribe of Dan, of the nation of Israel. This particular presentation, we do not, and I seriously mean this, intend for it to be long. We want to take the time out, respect the people's time. It's a school night for some, work night for others, rest night for many. We want to sit there, and while people are even mentally in a mode of getting out of the Feast of Unleavened Bread, while people are still in the mode of preparing for Shabbat, we definitely do not want to take up your time while going over a particular subject, while at the same time respecting the fact that you all respect us to do, watch, comment, like, and share. On a human level, I want to give due respect to the brother Moreh Yeftahk ben Dan, whom I've known for some time. I want to, in due respect, give respect to the lady in my life, Sarah Michaela of the tribe of Judah. I want to, in due respect, give due respect to my teachers, some who have passed away, Moreh Yosef, Rabbi Yeshurun, Cohen Larry, Moreh Mishael, Chief Simeon. They and many others are the reason I'm able to stand and teach at this present day. That is to say, of course, on the human level. All glory, all honor, all praise, all due benevolence to the God of Abraham, the God of Isaac, and the God of Jacob. Let us, brothers and sisters, get into this presentation, if we will. Let the book speak for itself. The altar that the Most High spoke of in Exodus, it says that one is not supposed to lift a tool upon it, because if you lift your tool upon it, you have desecrated it. The Most High does not need us. We need the Most High. As stated in the prayers when we were children, well, when I was a child, it stated, and after all things were created, then was his name proclaimed king. And after all things shall have had an end, he alone, the dreaded one, shall reign, who was, who is, and who will be in glory. In Hashaba, they had a song that the drummers in the congregation would sing called Haya Yihyeh. In other words, he who was, he who will be. Ha'el Elyon, the Most High. The one who sees all. Ha'el Ha'ro'eh Ha'kol. And the one who is not seen. Ha'el Asher Lo Yera'eh. This is the one, brothers and sisters, of whom we're speaking of. We're not talking of the creation or a creature, but one that was created. See, we don't have to debate whether should we do a birthday or not regarding the Most High. Birthday is pagan. Birthday is this. It's just having a good time. See, because the Most High meant olam ad olam hu. He's from everlasting to everlasting, so we don't have to sit there and worry about a birthday regarding the one who, in his own infinite wisdom, puts the baby in there X amount of months and has the milk develop in the Shaddayim, that's to say the breast of the female, for X amount of time. That is supreme intelligence, brothers and sisters. So, brothers and sisters, elders, house of Israel, let us, if we will, get into this. Shalom. Lux won't shrink wool is what this says. That it will not shrink wool. And as we can see, not trying to be disrespectful, we even see an image of an elder in it, and not trying to be funny. She's not wearing pants, she's wearing a skirt. I remember speaking with my younger relatives, and I asked them, if you can show a picture of great-grandma with pants on, please do. We're talking about a woman whose grandmother used to tell her about Lincoln in slavery. That's how far back on the maternal side of my dad's side. That's how far back some of those stories go. That my great-great-grandmother knew of Lincoln when she was a child. She did not wear pants. And you best believe they went through a lot. Reconstruction and everything else, which we're going to talk about in this particular case. Now, getting back to the point here, when you look at this here, Lux soap won't shrink wool. Let's see, brothers and sisters, what this is talking about. Shalom, my lady Sarai, shalom. Hulu Warren, shalom, Trevina. Shalom, everybody else in the chat. Please like, comment, and share. Thank you very much. Now, remember that said won't shrink wool, right? Let's see who had wool in the scriptures. I beheld two thrones were placed, and one that was ancient of days did sit. His raiment was as white snow, and the hair of his head like pure wool. His throne was fiery flames, and the wheel thereof burning fire. Now, according to Root of Windsor in his book, back from Babylon and Timbuktu, this is an anthropomorphic matter of the Most High. As we say, the hand of God, the eyes of God, the mouth of God, and so forth. So we're giving human attributes to our maker. And that's what we envision in this particular case. And it said the hair of his head like pure wool. So now these other nations, they know who had the woolly hair, so it's not hard to figure out what we're talking about, brothers and sisters. All right, so let us go on and continue with the time allotted. Now, the language that you see there, which is written, is actually Aramaic, because what you see as Hebrew script is truly Aramaic writing. That's a whole other lesson. But let's get into this next particular matter. Now, in due respect, the person whom you see there was my history teacher, Chief Simeon of the tribe of Judah. He came from a congregation called B'nai Zakin. B'nai Zakin is one of the oldest Old Testament camps that branched out from the Midwest and then eventually into New York. Now, my history teacher in the place where I was brought to as a child and taught what I learned. I spoke earlier of Moreh Yeftahk. He started the congregation you see there called Kol She'erit B'nai Yisrael, which is in the Bronx. That place there is where my mother, may she rest in peace, brought me to when I was a child. Age 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and so forth until age 10. And when we left in 1990, we already was taught of the ways of the Most High. Yes, a lot of my Hebrew came from Kohen Mikael. Yes, a lot of my history came from Chief Simeon. But my foundation about who I am, that I'm Shem and not him, where I got my first Hebrew name, came out of the man who taught in that place called Kol She'erit B'nai Yisrael. And this is no disrespect, but nobody is perfect. I will say this of Moreh Yeftahk who passed. I will say this of my mother who passed. When an offense was done, because nobody's perfect, it was a very deep and humbling thing to sit there and see somebody born before my mother's father apologize. Some elders, you can't, what? They're stuck in their ways. Could this be the reason why you can't be over 50 officiating as a priest? Because you can't be a Kohen from Kihan, which means to administer with the spirit of you can't tell me, I got this. You can't be a priest with that. Ruach. You understand? Always be teachable, if we will. Amen. So the person, again, whom you're seeing on the left-hand side was my history teacher, Chief Simeon, who, for those who follow the channel, I will still say to this day, he's been deceased over now 15 years. The history I go into still does not match up to the history that he was able to drop off the top of his head. So we have to, while we're losing our elders, while they're resting with their elders, we have to cherish it and continue that legacy. Get your books out. Get your literature out. Make your videos. Get a ghostwriter, brothers and sisters. Because as I stated, as known, Jeremiah didn't write Jeremiah. Baruch did. Come on. Next slide, please. Let's go on, please. We're not going to read all these scriptures, but we just want to go into Isaiah chapter 11. You can read that on your own. It says about the scattering, the outcasts of Judah, the dispersed of Israel. the dispersed of Judah and the outcast of Israel. Now, the Israelites we see, brothers and sisters, we want to show this with the laser pointer, if we will, right? Was in this vicinity here. Now, this was confirmed by people I know in Israel and others. The Jerusalem that you see on the news, brothers and sisters, is not, brothers and sisters, where the Jerusalem David was. That place that they show the Dome of the Rock from the Saladin and all that era, that was where the land of Ephraim was. Further south is where the true Jerusalem was. If we remember in Jeremiah, it said that the Most High would take Jerusalem and flip it like a dish. So it's still resting, like Leviticus 26 says. Because it has to pay its shop tote as well. Because the earth is alive. It says concerning the Canaanites in their ways, it says, "Watakwi ha'aretz et yoshbeha," and the earth, she vomited out her inhabitants. So the earth is alive, brothers and sisters. Let us continue in this particular case. And you can read those scriptures about the disbursement of the house of Israel. Notes and sources on the matter. All right. We see here Lower Egypt. This is by where last September me and my lady Sarah was. All right. In that particular area there. This is where you see that arrow where the laser pointer is at. That's where Israel went when Jerusalem was attacked by Babylon. Israel went south into Egypt. And what you see there highlighted on the left-hand side, like his predecessors, the presupposed the Palestinian states against Babylon. The Babylonian captivity of the Jews occurred during his reign. And many Jews, which we know as Judah, fled to Egypt. So, brothers and sisters, Israel went to Egypt, not England. Now, this is not to take away that Solomon did have ports that went as far as London. That's a whole other subject before you get into the Phoenician matter. Because Solomon was on some extra level stuff, doing business with Japheth and everything, like Tarshish and them and all of that. But getting back to the point of this presentation, brothers and sisters, what we want to point out is that a priest who was during the Dynasty 26 era of Egypt is when many Israelites fled into Egypt. And brothers and sisters, the Israelites did not make records like Ham became black because he lied. His nose is big because of this, and his lips is big. No. We didn't come up with things like Rashi and them did to try to explain or say black man. That's not of the Tanakh. All right? That's even beyond post-Tanakh. That's just ridiculous when you get right down into it. All right? So let's get into this particular matter, if we will. Let's go in, brothers and sisters. All right, pictures and a statement on the matter with the time allotted, giving honor to the Most High. Idumea is the Greek way of saying Edom. So therefore, we know later on you had Julius Caesar and Antipater were friends. Antipater is the father of Herod. Yeah, Julius Caesar, E2 Brutu guy, the one who got killed by 20-something people. He was friends with the Edomites, as was Agrippa of the house of Esau, friends with them. So these are things we want to point out for edification purposes. When Herod's father, Antipater, who was friends with Mark Antony, lost, and Mark Antony, a.k.a. lost to Octavian, a.k.a. Augustus, Esau decided to switch sides. But they always went into the land of Israel, as we're going to point out in archaeology. It says this: archaeology yet again confirmed the biblical picture. For from this was rebuilt after Sennacherib's destruction. Broken bits of pottery last records of its apparently still staunchy Yahwist. Yahwist meaning, as they say, trying to say of Yah, like the theory or the teachings of the Torah. Commander, part of it was cut off, a partly lost measure to him from the neighboring fortress, which says, to Eliashib, the word of the king is incumbent on you. Behold, I have sent to warn you today. Ramat Negeb has to be defended, at least Edom should come there. Now, that comes from a book, brothers and sisters, called The Bible is History by Ian Wilson. The Israelites was always wondering and, quote, worried about Esau going into their land. Ezekiel 35 talks on this matter. So when we talk about our book being the living book, this is what we're talking about. And brothers and sisters, While I speak about kosherity earlier, and while I talk about Moreh Yeftahk, may he rest in peace, I remember, not to be haughty, being 6 years old and explaining what the female menstrual cycle was in the first grade, because I was taught that by being taught Leviticus 15. The teacher was like, oh, what are you talking about? And this is no knock on other people's understanding. Well, she called me by my government, which I'm not going to state here. Where did you get that understanding from? I remember I was 6. In the temple, we was reading in the Tanakh. In the what? In the Tanakh. I'm 6 years old at the time, remember. Oh, what's that? We was reading in Leviticus. The teacher was like, oh, in the Bible. Now, mind you, we Old Testament based. So when the teacher said Bible, I'm looking like, what's the Bible? I did not know what the Bible was. I knew what the Tanakh was. I said, yeah, it's in Leviticus. She was like, yeah, Leviticus is in the Bible. I said, no, it's in the Tanakh. And eventually she was like, you know what? They didn't want to get quote unquote religious, so she just left the subject alone. Because I didn't hear of JC until I was 7 years old. So we was extremely Old Testament based, if we will. And this is no knock on anybody's understanding and so forth and so on. But brothers and sisters, what we want to emphasize, what we want to point out is that, as stated, the New Testament needs the old doesn't need the new. Come on. Let's go on to the next slide, if we will. Thank you. Lincoln honored an image of Dehu of ancient Egypt. Now, when me and my lady was in Egypt, we didn't see these images there. That's going further south towards Siwa, where her and I have spoken about and so forth. But here we see, going into Egypt, this one with Lincoln Memorial and honored is that. Now, there's a certain thing called ego. Who needs that kind of statue made of themselves outside of an egotistical person, be it made after them or before them? That's ego, if nothing else, to a great extent. You're going to remember me, that kind of thing. But I wanted to point this out about the Egypt matter, old, and then the Egypt matter, new. All right, let's go on to the next slide, if you will. He was the successor of Lincoln and his vice president. And they who hate you shall rule over you. Vayikra, or Leviticus 26, verse 17. This is President Johnson, the 17th president of the United States. He had slaves. Then, while president tried to deny black people certain rights, he was noted for calling black people, I'm not going to say it, you can see the word there. That's Lincoln's, not Hamlin from his first term. This is Johnson from Tennessee. That was the 17th president. And as the Most High stated through Moses, they who hate you shall rule over you. So how you have 12 presidents, 2 of them after Lincoln, who had slaves? Because when the Civil War happened, you had what they call the border states, Maryland, Kentucky, Missouri, and I think there was another one that was still supporting slavery but was fighting for the side of the Union. After the Civil War, this is how we know, like Kohen Mikael pointed out, the hand of the Most High in the matter. Because the North was not fighting to free the Negro. The North was fighting so that way the Negro won't sit there and come and take their jobs. Where they said we don't want slavery to expand is because they want to sit there and start the Industrial Revolution. Because France and other countries was getting up there, and America, the United States, fell behind. Jamaica done been free since 1838. You understand? Haiti's been free since 1803, 1804. The United States in 1853 reinstituted the Atlantic slave trade. This is why you find the Portuguese still doing it at Wall Street in the 1830s, even after the matter with Jefferson. They who hate you shall rule over you. So they fought, but it was the Most High, due to a particular matter, that through their fighting, as it says, the Most High will feed the enemies of Israel with their own flesh. So when you have over 600,000 of them killing each other, from that, the house of Israel, that was in the United States, did have some reprieve, thanks to the Most High and his hand in the matter. Because this man and these others in Reconstruction could not care about the Negro. It was not in their heart for the quote-unquote black man to be free. So this is what we want to point out for reasonable purposes. What is the solution while we talk on this particular matter, if we will? They were the belt used by the Most High. Psalms tells you, Israel, walk in my ways, I will put my hand against your enemies. So it's not about kicking the centurion of Rome with Titus in them. It's not about going down and say, we want our reparations and our rights. You want to be free? Keep the commandments of the Most High. Come on. You want to see your enemies fall? Return to Yah. Come on. They were just simply, how in the world, this is not to be quote unquote racial, how can, and I say this in no disrespect, a syphilis and herpes given people who died of the Tsetse fly when they went to West Africa sit there and take over X amount of millions of people and conquer them unless their rock, Yah, gave Israel over to their enemies? How did the mighty Yoruba and Mandingo fall to the Portuguese? How did such a thing happen? They who sit there, and did you know that there were no rats inside what we call the United States till the Spaniards came? They indigenous to Africa, Asia, and Europe. Rats is not indigenous to the United States. Every rat you see is a child of what was brought over by the Spaniards. So these are things we just want to point out. So how did they conquer our people unless we fell from, the lack of a better term, grace from the Most High? Let us return back. So much for those who thought was a friend. This is Abraham Lincoln's wife. She is noted as stating, brothers and sisters, she wrangled acrimoniously with her in her quote unquote delightful N-words. Even in the movie Lincoln, I think her name was Sally something, I was playing Lincoln's wife. She could care less about the Negro and the freedom. The 13th Amendment, what are you really trying to do, dude? That's really what she was about. You understand? There's a book called Her Property Too by Mary Jones. It's a sister from Yale University. Come on. And she wrote a book about how they used to sit there and buy black men as slaves for sex slaves. How they used to have to at times, excuse me, kill the baby because the baby was a bit too brown. Have you ever heard of that song called, excuse me, Fly in the Buttermilk? It was popular in the South in slavery. It goes as such. Fly in the buttermilk, shoot, fly, shoot. Fly in the buttermilk, shoot, fly, shoot. What are we talking about? The buttermilk was the mistress of the slave master, his wife, if you will, even. The fly was the person she hired to be intimate with her when the slave master was away. So when they would see in slavery, brothers and sisters, the slave master coming, they would sit there and say, fly in the buttermilk, shoot, fly, shoot. Fly in the buttermilk, shoot, fly, shoot. And that was the way to have it to be known. Oh, like it says in Proverbs 7, the good man is out at home and he's going on a long journey. That kind of thing. So, brothers and sisters, we just want to point this out for edification purposes. Thank you to the people who joined in. Let us continue in this. Now, this is not to be disrespectful. We're showing Deuteronomy 28, the matter of Egypt and America, what happened with us as the house of Israel. Egyptians showing attacking who was attacked in the southern United States. Now, from the right side of this is a scene from the movie Django, for those who do know. And what you see on the left-hand side is a picture of King Tutankhamun attacking the people with dogs as you sit there and see under the horse. So when we speak, for instance, about Mizraim or Egypt by Aniyot or ships, you can see what the Egyptians was about and what they used to attack. Guess the Egyptians were black. Who they used to attack other black people, and then our ancestors who had dogs sicked on them, even in this particular case. So if you look again under the horse, you will see the dogs attacking the people who were of Nubia. Now, mind you, Nubians and Hebrews in the Middle Kingdom of Egypt, several dynasties before King Tut, were friends. Was this something that King Tut was about, brothers and sisters, being that he did not live to see 2021? Or was it common in Egypt to put a predecessor pharaohs achievements and then put your name on it. That's why when you look into the Egyptian thing, it's kind of hard to always pinpoint something, because they will put themselves inside of the writings and achievements of other pharaohs. So trying to go archaeology with just that is not always the way. All right, for step by step, if we will. Let's go in, if you will, and close out House of Israel. Tutsi in Ghana, Israelites. Igbo, Israelites. South Africa, Lingba, Israelites. Ethiopia, Falasha, Israelites. So when you're looking at this real quick, brothers and sisters, we spoke about Isaiah and the other portions about Israel being scattered. So it's not too hard, again, to figure out what we're dealing with and what we're talking about, brothers and sisters. Did you know that several months ago, for whatever it's worth, the Igbo people were declared by like the Jewish state or whatever, or the Jewish Senate, whatever they call themselves, to be legitimate, quote, Hebrew Israelites? That's been put on YouTube and everything like that. Did you know that there were Igbo people that were shipped to Georgia? Did you know that there were Igbo people shipped to Jamaica? Wow. Have you ever heard of Daddy Sharp of Jamaica? Every person from Jamaica knows of Daddy Sharp or Sam Sharp. The same year Nat Turner did his thing in Virginia, he did with 20,000 Igbo people in Jamaica and rose up against the slave masters. The same time frame that Nat Turner did what he did in Virginia, a person in Jamaica named Sam Sharp, aka Daddy Sharp, with the Igbo people that were captives, rebelled against the enslavers. So these are things we want to point out, brothers and sisters. We spoke on the Falashas, almost drained it. So let's go on, if you will, to the next part, please. Jeremiah's prophecy. Let the book speak for itself. Therefore fear thou not, O Jacob, my servant, saith Yah, neither be dismayed, O Israel. For lo, I will save thee from afar, and thy seed from the land of their captivity. And Jacob shall again be quiet and at ease, and none shall make him afraid. Israel, our husband, is the Most High. On a human level, the duty of a husband is to make sure his Isha, his lady's not afraid. He's supposed to be her Shalom, if we will. Just as much as we want Elohim, our Ish, our man, our chief, to be as he stated he would be. So looking at this in Jeremiah, it says his seed, speaking of Israel, pardon me, thy seed. In that particular case, where do you get spiritual Israel from? When it says seed, there's no such thing as spiritual Israel. The issue is, like Ezekiel said, Israel needs a new spirit.
That's right.
It's not that you remove Israel and then you spiritual Israel. Israel's spirit is supposed to be righteous.
That's right.
That's where the distinction comes into play. Because one thing you know about the scriptures is it doesn't romanticize. Jeremiah is the same one who said, for among my people, for among my people are found wicked men. It's not romanticized. You were the great, and let's make a statue of you forever. No, y'all was kidnapping each other. Day and nights. The tribe I lay claiming on hold to were kidnapping Levites, saying you're going to be my priest perpetually. That's madness.
It is.
The woman curses the thief of the tribe of Dan. Her son gives her the money back. She takes an idol and they both worship it.
Right.
Dan, what are you doing? You understand?
Come on.
That's not nice. For I am with thee, saith Yah, to save thee. For I will make a full end of all the nations, whether I have scattered thee. But I will not make a full end of thee. For I will correct thee in measure and will not utterly destroy thee. So Israel got a promise no matter what we go through. From the Atlantic slave trade, which they still trying to figure the numbers out. From over 5,000 people, Ralph Ginsburg spoke about getting lynched. And I say this in no disrespect, the estimated 7,000 black men that do homicide on each other every year in the United States. You understand? The Most High said that Israel shall be saved from the land of their captivity. So we want to point this out for edification purposes. Next slide, please. The diaspora in a matter. Now, what you're looking at here on the map is taken from Ben Ami's book, may he rest in peace. It's a book called God, the Black Man and Truth. Now, what you're looking at on the top there, with those three arrows, that's saying that what the Apocrypha talks about, Aseret, that was going into Northern Africa. All right. And then you get into the matter, for not jumping a gun, with Eldad the Danite, and he spoke about Dan and Simeon and Asher and Levi and them joining up with other tribes and so forth and so on. Right. Then you had the southern kingdom when it fell, and the part that went there. So from Assyria to there, and then you see the migration of Israel going to other places on this map. So when we show about the Limba, when we show about the Falasha, when we showed about the Tutsi, and when we sat there and showed about the Igbo, it's not too hard to figure out what we're talking about. All right, next part. How can we forget? Here we see the Atlantic slave trade in part with the time allotted, brothers and sisters. All right. And those scriptures there you can look on your own. Ezekiel 11:16, Ezekiel 20:23, and Psalms 44, verse 11. For we are brought very low with scattering. Did you know that Barbados became British colony until, say, maybe last year, or British property to say last year. But the word Barbados is a Portuguese word meaning beard. That was the first drop off in many, many places, brothers and sisters, for the captives, because they would break them in Barbados and then reship them. So we want to point this out, that you cannot divide in his story the said West Indian man and the said African American man, if we will, like Kohen Mikael pointed out. The only difference, if there is a difference, brothers and sisters, is where the ship landed. One in Virginia, one in Costa Rica, one in Jamaica, one in Mississippi. And let us not forget, one in Haiti and one in Louisiana. And then after 1807, from Haiti to Louisiana. Get the book I wrote on that subject. But let's go on, if you will, to the next slide, if you will. All right, here we see, brothers and sisters, Negro land. And this is the Atlantic Ocean. And this map here, circled there, is Negro land. And we're going to show it as we see the Ethiopian Ocean, which is now called the Atlantic Ocean. All right, so this is something, brothers and sisters, that we want to talk about for edification purposes, if we will. All right, let's go on, if we will, with the time allotted to the next slide. I wanted to show this a little clearer. Negro land. This is a map dated back in the day. Negro land in Guinea. And as we see here, Atlantic Ocean, Gulf of Guinea, Negro land. Why does this become important? Is because what we're going to show here. The English, like the French and the Dutch, obtained more of their slaves from the true Negro population of Upper Guinea. Now, what are we pointing out? Because, brothers and sisters, if this is Guinea, and this is called Negro land on a map dated, brothers and sisters, from the matter of the 18th century, Upper Guinea would be over here. So when we go to the book on Black Cargoes, all right, by Cowley and Mannix, you begin to see why we're showing the maps and the citations. There were slavery ports, for those who do know, like Whydah, Lagos, Bonny, Old Calabar, Cape Coast Castle. These places is where the captives will be kept before being made to be put on ships. Most of the captives were between ages 18 and 25. About the last of August came in a Dutch man of war that sold us 20 negars, said John Wolfe in 1619. Now, the 1619 matter, we're going to talk about as we go on in history, but not so much at this point with the time allotted. The question I asked is this regarding the Negroes that were brought over to Jamestown, Virginia in 1619. What made that Dutch dude comfortable to do such? Ever since 1607, what we call Virginia today, brothers and sisters, was a British/English colony. It was the first colony. So now 12 or so years later, you got a Dutch guy bringing in captives to them. What made him comfortable to do it unless they already was participating in the slave trade itself? So pleased with the story of saying that Anthony Johnson was the pioneer of American slavery in 1655, when America by name did not get like that until 1776. So just as much as it was still colonial America from 1607 all the way, brothers and sisters, until the matter of 1776, Georgia being the last colony in 1732. So let's go on, if you will, to the next part in this. Now, what this shows here is the Negroes, our ancestors, that after slavery, where they went through a migration. See, my family, if you're watching, that's in from like the paternal side, like, you know, that's still in Winston, North Carolina. Yeah, I'm blowing the spot up of the city. That's still in Winston. This is where my moms and pops met in New York City back in 78, 79. After their ancestors, not to try to make it all too personal, migrated from the South. Then you had those during the gold rush in the 1870s that migrated west. So you see how LA gets so many of our people. You see how Oakland gets so many of our people. I didn't know that there was that many of our people in Oakland until I saw the movie Deep Cover. And then I did a little reading. I'm like, wow, okay. Did you know that Gary, Indiana has more black people in that city than any other city populated by black people? That's where Michael Jackson is from. Gary, Indiana, there's more black people in there than LA. There's more black people in Gary, Indiana than New York. So we just want to point that out, that in the Midwest, while we talk about people like they who started the congregation, but now King started in the Midwest. When you read about Crowdy, and then you read about Prophet Cherry, they came from Tennessee in what they call the Dirty South, and then migrated to the Midwest, and then from there it expanded on this knowledge of us being the house of Israel. Let's go on, if you will, to the next slide. Hung in Assyria and America. So when you see the book, thinking the Most High to be able to write it from Assyria to America, that's what happened. We want to point this out. All right? At a library, and the reason why. Now, we're about done with the presentation. This is in Connecticut when I was with some family and whatnot. I decided to take a picture by the library. Get your library card.
Yeah, come on.
Get your library card. And don't do what, I'll say my middle name. Don't do what Tashawn did. Let it expire. And I'm going to say this, House of Israel, like I posted. It is, you can find a better big brother for your little son and an older sister for your daughter. And this is deep but yet sad. Then you can loan an Israelite a book. Don't let Israel, sad to say, hold your book. You'll be better off letting them watch your baby brother, your baby sister, your little son, or your little daughter. Israel is more responsible with boys and girls, understandably so, than books. Israel has stolen books. We don't want to continue that legacy. Everybody knows in the quote conscious world, you don't loan your books out. We got to change that. All right. So let's go in. In Proverbs, it says, wisdom calls aloud outside. She raises her voice in the open squares. She cries out in the chief concourses. At the opening of the gates in the city, she speaks her words. How long will you simple ones? You know the Hebrew word for simple is petit. Not trying to play English and Hebrew, but petty. But petit means simple in that case. How long will you simple ones? Will you love simplicity? And scorn is delight in their scorning, and fools hate knowledge. When you see something like the Boondocks, and I'm not going to repeat the word, the N-word, but he holds the book, says, read, N-word, read. He's like, no. Like Chris Rock said, books are like kryptonite to them. Whatever it is, get your reading on, because there's a reason why they made sure we could not read. They made sure, and this is not to try to be racial or anything like that, but I got to sit back, and when I'm on the A train or the 4 train in New York City, mainly the A train, because the A train is more racially diverse than the 4 train. And somebody's looking at it, said, black man reading this book. Hey, what you reading there? But look at their newspaper and see if they don't, what are you doing? But it's rude to look at somebody's book or newspaper. But when a black man or woman is reading, say, hey, what you reading there? I'd rather be the race and nationality I am. Because every time you looking and wondering why somebody's reading something and you start getting worried, it's no different when I was the thief as a child and my imam said, bring the receipt. I said, bring me the receipt. Matter of fact, forget the receipt, go get the belt. I already know what you did. That was everything. No tignob, that should not steal. I didn't want her to look at the receipt. Just like they don't want us in many cases to see the record and the receipts of stuff that happened. You understand? So when you're trying to cover up and have to hide and do this and move shiesty, I remember one time speaking and show you how people can try to be rude with the time allotted. We're going to close out. Oh, I accidentally threw out the receipt in the garbage. All right. We was in Vanderveer in East Flappers. They now call it Flappers Gardens. This is August of '88. Everybody's outside. I go outside knowing I took the $2. Instead of just saying I took it, please let me not be on punishment. Please take it out my allowance. Please let me work off the theft. That would have been more responsible. And knowing my mother, she would have been like, all right, that'll work, but you're still not going outside. I'll find something for you to do to work it off, because everything ain't got to be a marker or a spanking. You feel me? So now, looking at it like that, I went in the garbage and started digging for the said receipt that I knew wasn't there. When I got back in, knowing I took the $2, was not fly. All you had to do was just admit it. People respect you more when you admit it. Even, do you know that even in this court system here, you know they'll give you more time if you make them go to trial instead of just confessing? You wasted our time, as they call taxpayers' money, and all of that. You're gonna give you more time just because you knew of your guilt or your innocence or something like that. So just want to point that out. Let's go on and close out, brothers and sisters. Conclusion, finally, okay. The book my lady wrote, Chronicles of a Black Woman's Soul. I always want to support the sister in my life, Tanya Westbrook. You can see the author right there. This book is available on Amazon. The ISBN, you can go to isbn.com, find us, 979-873-349-8188. And this is not trying to be funny. Let's get into it and do it our way. Tisha, Shabbat, Tisha, Shemona, Shabbat, Shalosha, Arba, Tisha, Shemona Echad, Shemona. All right? See, it's easy. And then these books are available on Amazon for more information or what we talked about. Deuteronomy 28. You can get this by going to Yeshiah, Yisrael. Each of these books that you see here are $7 each. I condensed it so that way people who want to buy it can do so. All right. And it gets to the crux of a matter in this particular matter and in this particular case. All right. From Aversa, Alabama, the journey of the Hebrews, Deuteronomy 28, the condition of the blacks in this particular case. All right. And the sister Sarai, myself, this was a picture made by the sister Fab Aim and putting it together. And as you can see there, and so forth and so on. So again, giving honor to the Most High, the Creator and the Maker of heaven and earth. These books available on Amazon. And the book that my lady wrote as well is also available, brothers and sisters, on Amazon. So I'm going to step down now, giving honor to the Most High, the Creator and the Maker of heaven and earth. For those who are watching, when this is uploaded, you will be able to see the contact info and how you can even donate to the congregation, Moreh Yeftahk All right. All of that is already in there. It's already preset in there like that. And with that, I say Todah for the time. Most I bless you. Shalom. Ending broadcast. Okay, I'm going to call up the brother Moreh Yeftahk. Shalom. Todah for the time. Okay.
Continuous praise to the Most High God, King of heaven and earth, even the God of our forefathers, the God of Abraham, the God of Yitzchak, and the God of Israel. To him and to him alone are all due praises. Just want to say peace and blessings to everyone. I'm appreciating you more and more the more I listen to you. And let me just tell you something. It's more than Torah lessons. It's history. We can't even call it history untold. It's history that's been told and that's being unfolded that we're now finally listening to.
Well, thank you. Todah.
And so I'm going to take 5 minutes to talk about the importance of archaeology and what it does for us as Israelites.
Okay, I'm going to go sit.
Okay. Archaeology, as we move forward as a people, allows us to connect the dots. It allows us to stop and say, oh, now that makes sense. That's my father. That's my mother. That's my great-grandfather. Those were their people, and these were their neighbors. You talk about the Igbo, right? And what they were doing, and the Falasha Jews, right? And what they were doing. And what happened is that we're a people who we've been labeled and relabeled and mislabeled and called everything except what?
A child of God.
A child of God. This is all of us. And so when we get there, we stop and we say, if I'm African American, I don't read that in the Bible. Archaeology tells you who you are. If I'm Black, I don't read that in the Bible. Archaeology tells you who you are. If I'm Jamaican, if I'm Panamanian, if I'm what do you call it? But from Belize, I don't know what you call people from Belize, but the people from Belize, right? If you're all those people, then you say, this is where I'm from. But how do you make the connection back to the Bible? Everything won't always be the transatlantic slave trade because we weren't all in slavery. Some people actually migrated. Some people were actually already in slavery before the transatlantic slave trade took place. So now what do? We stop and we look back and we read our history. We wonder, where does the Bible, where does the Holy Scriptures fit in with who we are as a people? So we can identify with Egypt. Why? Because we see Black people in Egypt. We see Black people on the walls. But the Persians and the Medes, I heard you teach about that. Taught about it on my channel, right? Yeah. What color were the Persians and the Medes? They weren't black, but they were what? People of color, melanated people, which now makes us say, okay, if everything wasn't whitewashed and everything wasn't European and it wasn't everything that was happening in that portion of the world, now we can begin to connect some different dots. What was happening in Asia while the children of Israel were living in their land? We forget about that often. So, as I hear you speak about Shem, Ham, and Japheth, until you learn about who these three men were, until you learn to read about how the world was populated by these three men, how things were dispersed, you can't understand who you were. You can't understand who your forefathers were, and you can't understand why they made the moves the way they made the moves. Right? Abraham didn't go to the south. Abraham didn't go to the north. He went to the south. Yes. He had to go to a land. Our forefathers, when they fled, they were reluctant to go northward. What did they always do? They always went back to Egypt. They stayed somewhere around Babylon. They stayed somewhere around Persia, but we didn't end up in European lands until the European man came and took us there. Ask yourself the question, why? And then you can appreciate Moreh Yeftahk Torah lessons.
Well, thank you, Todaya.
Then you could get there. Then you're like, wait a minute, this makes sense. How come our forefathers never wanted to go over there? Unless we understood that there was something wrong going on over there, right? When you sit down and you say, how did it make sense that if we're going into captivity and we're going to run, that we're going to run amongst a people that look like us so we could what? Blend in. Now, when we blend in, archaeology makes sense. Now the dark continent makes sense. Now you see while we were doing, they'd be like, well, how do you have a Philistia Jew? Because the children of Israel went down there to what? Blend in. It only worked in part. They still understood who we was. Yeah. So when we talk about black on black crime, black people don't like each other and all that other stuff, this ain't nothing new. It was then. We knew how to point each other out. We knew who our kind were and who our kind weren't, although we looked alike. We're like, wait a second. How do we know? By their culture, by their practices. What are those fringes that they're wearing? How come they got those things on their head? I had my style of turban. They had their style of turbans. Are we the only ones who wear fringes? No. The Asians, they wear fringes, but they wear fringes the way you see on our brothers from ISUPK and things of that nature, where it follows the entire brim. You see in Asian culture that they do that. The fringe is not a new thing. What is this distinctive trait for our fringe? The quarter blue. So when you look at archaeology, which archaeology is nothing more than a study of culture and a study of antiquity. When you look at those things, when you start to study those things, now you can stop and you can look and you can say, well. I didn't know our forefathers were wearing fringes. I didn't know that our foremothers never wore pants. I didn't know that our forefathers were dealing with things in such a way they wouldn't deal with certain books, because the introduction of those books introduces us to things like demons and devils and things of that nature, mythology. And when we looked at that mythology and when we seen the different things going on, we had to stop and we had to say to ourselves, wait a second, something ain't right here. Something ain't adding up. And so I say that because as we begin to connect the dots, we're not going to be able to connect it all in one day. There's going to be some history that's lost, and that's okay. We could lose history long as we don't lose God.
Amen. Right.
We can lose history long as we don't lose God. How did our forefathers do this? I don't know. How did our forefathers do that? I'm not exactly too sure. But what I do know that we never lost, that stayed preserved over millennia, is how to serve God. The Holy Scriptures have lasted from the time our forefathers wrote it up to 2,000 years later. And we're still writing history now. So as we talk about these things and as we do the different things, keep going, my brother, because I like what you're doing and the way that you're doing it. Let's make sure that we make ourselves available to history. Your mind will not break because you're reading. You might get a headache. You might be like, wow, I got a lot of bit of information, but it won't break. And actually, the more you read, the better you'll get at reading and retaining information. As Israelites, all of us should be well read, and all of us should understand what the Most High God wants from us. Hoping and praying that you got something out of what I said, and that the Most High God found these words acceptable to be spoken before his people, as I bid you all in the tongue of our forefathers. Shalom Aleichem. And my brother, Moreh Yeftahk, please close us out this evening.
Okay, not a problem. This east is this way?
East is this way, sir.
Amen. Hallelujah.
Hallelujah.
Most High, King of all forefathers, power of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. Ha'el Ha'Rachamah, Ha'el Ha'Rophe, the merciful power, the healing power. Ha'el Elyon, the most high power. No de lefaneka al ha'layla hazeh. We will give thanks unto thee even upon this night. Ki atahe beitanu po b'shalom, for you brought us here in peace. Tipshe bebakusha shalom lehiyot b'chayenu. Cause peace to spread even within our lives. Eloheinu we Elohei Abotenu, our power and the power of our forefathers. Al na tishkak et amka Yisrael. Forget not, please, your people Yisrael. Tekazek na kulanu na Yehovah. Bavakusha, strengthen us. We ask you, O Holy One of Yisrael. Eloheinu we Elohei Abotenu, our power and the power of our forefathers. Titain ruach a b'chayenu. Give us the spirit of compassion in our lives, O Yah. But libotenu in our hearts. Wagam ke mak shabotenu in our thoughts. Wagam met ruchenu in our spirits. Wagam et gishutenu even in our attitudes, O Yah. Eloheinu we Elohei Abotenu. Rapana et gufenu. Heal our bodies, O Yah. Eloheinu we Elohei Abotenu. Tibarik et kol machanot b'nei Yisrael. Tibarik na et has kwanim b'has kwanot. Hayladim b'haladot. Wagamet hayladim. Wagamet bekurim. Wagam kain ha'almot. Eloheinu we Elohei Abotenu. Tibarik na et neshenu wa'an shenu. Tibarik na et ha-ma'aseh ha-ma'asim zadakwa be'ineka. Bless those, O Yah, even who do the work of righteousness, even in thine eyes. Most High, King of all that there is. Salak la nu mekol katotenu. Forgive us even of our iniquities. Shema na tefillotenu. Hear our prayer, Babakushaya. What gamkain aona. Titain keresh, Babakushaya. Give not even a deaf ear, even unto such. And if you will not accept our prayers, O Yah, Zakor bebakusha, tefillot Dawid ben Yishai, tefillot Moshe ben Amram, tefillot Shalomo ben Dawid, tefillot Eliyahu ben Yisrael, even the kings and the prophets of old, O Yah, King of all that there is. Asking you to even bless this congregation, that the congregations even said sense of this, O Yah. We ask for all these things, Bishmekarak, only in thy name, Yodhe Wahe Eloheinu. He who was, he will be our power. Amen. Shalom, brothers and sisters. Thank you for the time. We close out now. Please like, comment, and share. Check the description on how to donate. We will appreciate. Todah, shalom.